In London, Charles and Edwin are being chased by the spirit of a soldier haunting the museum. They must destroy his gas mask, then he'll move on to his afterlife. Edwin needs Minor Arcana Volume 4, but Charles left the fire spell back at the office. A flashback to the day before shows the two ghosts meeting the spirit of a nurse, mentioning the new exhibit related to the Great War. She explained that there were spirits still attached to that pain and anguish, so she stayed to help them move on. Charles and Edwin try mirror hopping to the office but fail to do so. The World War I ghost catches up with them. They flee and keep mirror hopping until they lead the spirit into the agency. The soldier attacks Charles, but he manages to take off the mask and throw it to Ed, who sets it on fire. Edwin and Charles have to hide before Death comes to collect him, otherwise she'll take them too. Later, they meet a new client at the Dead Boy Detective Agency. The little girl needs them to help her friend Crystal, who is a psychic. She explains that Crystal has been behaving strangely. Charles thinks she is a demon and assures her that they've dealt with demonic possession before. The two ghosts disguise themselves and surround Crystal in the tube. Charles subdues her while Edwin draws the runes on the floor. Crystal beats them up but eventually falls onto the magic circle. The train flips as the demon tries to escape. Ed throws a sheet covered in runes that pulls the demon out. Crystal meets her saviors, who take her to the agency to rest. She thanks them for getting David the demon out of her. She and Charles go for a walk and chat. While they were out, the postman came with potential cases. Charles decided to let Crystal stay with them till her memories come back. He argues that she can help out with the living. As she checks a missing person poster, Crystal has a vision of that girl Becky trapped with an enormous snake and surrounded by black magic. She tells the two ghosts that Becky is alive. The trio decide to help the little girl, and they travel to the US. Crystal finds them a room above a butcher shop. Ed and Charles disguise themselves as two officers and ask Becky's parents to walk them through their mourning on the day Becky was taken. Crystal reads their minds for specifics. She discovers that the police found Becky's shoes by a creek, so if they get them, she can see where she last wore them. Edwin hops into a mirror on the ground and retrieves them, but he burns his hand as ghosts are vulnerable to iron. Crystal reads the shoes, then they head to the front porch of a house. Edwin asks a cat, who tells him that the house belongs to a witch. Ed comments that witches are tricky and dangerous. They head to a diner to talk about their plan before going into the witch's house. Crystal goes to the bathroom and the lights start to flicker. She is then transported elsewhere. The demon who possessed her, David, shows up and reveals that he took some of her memories. He adds that her powers make her so special that he's looking forward to getting back inside her. Crystal explains that he can't unless she lets him, given that Ed and Charles exorcised him. Charles wakes her up, and she sees as the people in the diner were filming the whole thing. Crystal starts yelling at Ed and Charles. Charles says that they have to remember what she's been through. Edwin reminds him that he spent over 70 years in hell. A flashback to 1916 shows Edwin in a boarding school. Some boys kidnapped him while he was asleep. They tied him up and offered him to the demon Saal as a sacrifice. The demon appeared, burned the boys, and took Edwin to hell. In the present, Ed uses his binding spell on the cat to learn more about the witch. Charles shows Crystal his parents in the mirror and says he's been watching them for the last 30 years or so. If she's sticking around, he asks her to let them in. Crystal reveals that she fell for David, and despite knowing he was a demon, she let him in. She tells a furious Edwin that David lied to her and wouldn't leave. Downstairs, Edwin tells her that his disappearance was labeled an act from God. Their deaths didn't matter, and no one ever solved them. He stresses that they are solving cases that would never be solved, and they matter. Crystal holds his hand and tells him that she just wants to help. Ed learns that the witch Esther Smith is deeply obsessed with youth. She kidnaps local girls every few years to steal their vitality. The next day, the trio head to the witch's house and wait for her to leave. Charles and Edwin head inside and forbid Crystal from entering, as witches are dangerous. The pair unlocks a kitchen cupboard that is too far forward. Edwin decides to peek in. He gets sucked into the magical void full of bones and shoes. He finds Becky, who is still alive. Charles throws a rope and his bag of tricks backpack, and he manages to pull them up. Crystal's watch isn't working properly, so she heads to the house, but Esther corners her. She uses her pipe to paralyze her. Ed and Charles step in, but Esther attacks them both with her iron cane. Crystal peers inside Esther's mind, then Charles possesses her. Edwin scolds him as they never possess people, given that it has bad consequences. Esther hits her head multiple times so that Charles leaves her body. She then warns them that they opened a real bag of worms by digging around in her memories. Crystal erases Becky's bad memories and the trio take her home. The episode ends with alarms blaring in the Afterlife Lost and Found department. The chief looks at pictures of Charles and Edwin and comments that she found the two naughty boys.